it's all in one. Like, and I'll be in the room that the right ones and stuff. I think it's 2019, I think when we started. Is that when we started? That's when we you know what? 3 years ago today. 3 years ago yesterday. And we did.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. everybody.
Ready to go? Yeah. I'd like to call to order the Lowell Area Schools Board of Education regular meeting, 7:02 p.m. Would please recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Additions or changes to the agenda? Public comments on agenda items.
Yes.
Just a
One
Yep.
moment. David Polka.
Evening. My name is David Kapolka. My wife and I have lived in the Lowell district since 1999. We're both retired teachers, she from Ionia, me from Forest Hills. I'm proud to say that several educators in the Lowell district are former students of mine. We are all immigrants. Sometimes in our history, somewhere, our ancestors came here for better opportunities and to start a new life. For some immigrants continue to be discriminated against. Our history needs to be told over and over so we do not repeat some of the same mistakes. That is why books are important. Not only to relay information, but to keep accurate records for all posterity. The American story is a difficult one for many people to completely understand. That is why here it is, America, warts and all. And today, some folks would like you to believe that there are new warts germinating. But others of us see them as beauty marks on the fabric of America. Banning books because they include stories about people we disagree with, ideas we disagree with, lifestyles we disagree with, is not a path an accepting society should follow. It is one thing to choose our own pathway in life. It is unacceptable to mandate or restrict the lifestyle of others. Carl Sagan, a famous scientist, someone I called a friend. When our genes could not store all the information necessary for survival, we slowly invented them. But then the time came, perhaps 10,000 years ago, when we needed to know more than we could conveniently contain in our brains. So we learned to stockpile enormous quantities of information inside our bodies. We are the only species on the planet, so far as we know, to have invented a communal memory stored neither in our genes nor in our brains. The warehouse of that memory is called the library. The library is for me. Like a school, is not a place people should be harassed for the books they choose to read. Writing is perhaps the greatest of human inventions, binding together people, citizens of distant epochs, who never knew one another. Books break the shackles of time, proof that humans can work magic. We need to continue that magic in Lowell. Thank you.
Claire Vandenberg.
Claire Vandenberg, proud to be a teacher for Lowell Area Schools. Before I came to Lowell, I spent 17 years teaching college students as an adjunct professor. First at MSU, then overlapping at LCC, CMU, and U of M, at each teaching various children and young adult literature courses, and I need to teach ed students. It's from this background and experience that I come to speak to you, the board tonight, in support of Christine Beachler and the way she's handled the recent book challenges and against the banning of books. I've listened to Christine speak and read everything she's written about the issue, and as you well know, she has handled these challenges exactly as she should. We are lucky to have her. When I was teaching children's lit, this was a topic that would often come up. My students would say, "This is a great book, but can you use it at school? What if parents complain?" Here's what I would tell them. If you try to put together a collection of books that will offend no one, two things will happen. One, you will fail. There are always people who find something to complain about. And two, you will have a very narrow, limited, boring collection of books that will not encourage your students to read. What is more important is that you know why you would include specific books and what their value is. You've heard Christine speak before about the importance of literature for children being both a mirror in which one finds themselves in their own life reflected, as well as a window to the world in which one can view lives that they have not led and perspectives that they could not experience themselves. So I won't expand on that. Catherine Patterson, a well-known and highly respected award-winning author for children and young adults, has this to say: "It is not enough to simply teach children to read. We have to give them something worth reading, something that will stretch their imaginations, something that will help them make sense of their own lives and encourage them to reach out toward people whose lives are quite different from their own. The wonderful thing about books is that they allow us to enter imaginatively into someone else's life. And when we do that, we learn to sympathize with other people. But the real surprise is that we also learn truths about ourselves, about our own lives, that somehow we hadn't been able to see before." Patterson says, "I believe it's my responsibility to create characters who are real, not models of good behavior. If they are to be real, they must speak and act like real people. I have a lot of respect for my readers. I do not expect them to imitate my characters, simply to care about them and understand them. When I taught my college students, I like to bring a book to class called Love and Sex, 10 Stories of Truth, and ask them if they would consider having this book in their classroom, waiting for knee-jerk reactions. But if I had done a good job teaching them, I got questions instead, showing that they knew that it mattered what the stories had to say about sex and why, or who or what age would be reading the book, not just that it included the topic of sex." In a foreword to Love and Sex, editor Michael Cart quotes a woman whom a young adult fiction book award is named after, saying, "More than 50 years ago, a pioneering young adult librarian named Margaret Edwards protested that many adults seem to think that if sex is not mentioned at adolescence, it will go away. As succeeding decades have demonstrated, silence is no arbiter of behavior, and not only has sex not gone away, it's become a quintessential, perhaps even obligatory rite of passage for adolescents." Back to Patterson to wrap up. "All of us can think about a book that we hope none of our children or any other children have taken off the shelf. But if I had the right to remove that book from the shelf, work that I adore, then you also have exactly the same right, and so does everyone else, and then we have no books left on the shelf." Our children are bombarded with messages of hate, pornography, crass commercialism, etc., and there's no way that we can protect them from the society emitting such. But a reader can close a book that is too difficult or upsetting. If the book becomes a forbidden object, it becomes all the more enticing. I suggest that parents read these challenging and challenged books and use them for opportunities to talk about difficult subjects with their child. We need to remind ourselves that any book that has the power also has the power to offend.
Claire, I'm gonna
Those of us
Yep.
who want our children to experience the power of great literature need to nourish and inspire that risk.
Thank you, Claire.
I'll be quick for this one because I didn't write a speech for the this portion. I feel really badly that I see so many people coming and bombarding the board with thoughts and talk about kindness and love and respect for Christine Beechler. Somehow, the appropriateness of sexually explicit content in books for children has turned into we are somehow being unkind and disrespectful to Christine Beechler. And that is not the case. All I've ever tried to do is bring to your attention that we are serving up sexually explicit content to minors in school. And it's wrong. Not only wrong morally, but it's against the law. If it's not part of the school curriculum, sexually explicit content cannot be and should not be served up to kids at school. And I'm speaking about minors. And the federal legal definition of an adult is 18 or older. The vast majority of high school students are not 18 years old. That's all I've ever tried to talk to you about. I am not a book banner, but I am 100% about keeping sexually explicit content away from minors without parental consent or permission. And somehow or another, we've got to get over that hurdle and understand this is not about Christine's feelings or how people love or show kindness. That is not what this is about. Wrap your minds around that. Let's get this show on the road and clean up this smut from our schools. I need all the help I can get. Thank you.
Okay, Dusty Hawk. Does anybody know why you are taught in history class in school about how Andrew Jackson was a horrible person? Because he destroyed the second private Western Central Bank in America. Kazarian banking cartels didn't like that. They had to bankrupt the country through a civil war to get their foot in the door through the 1871 U.S. Corporation Organic Act. Then in 1913 with the Federal Reserve Act. With the Federal Reserve Act, the corporation now printed the currency, not the treasury. The Federal Reserve is neither federal nor does it have any reserves. It simply prints money out of thin air that all of us are on the hook for. That is called slavery. In 2023, only 0.16% of the U.S. Federal Reserve note is spendable. The other 98.4% is debt. You know some of that is inflation. Eisenhower knew this with his military-industrial complex speech. JFK knew this and gave a speech about the enslavement of every man, woman, and child. JFK went as far as to start issuing silver certificates from the U.S. Treasury in 1963. The banking cartels couldn't have that threat and removed it November 22nd, 1963. Reagan was sent a message when he threatened their power with a bullet in his lung. But Reagan achieved his one goal: dissolve the USSR. Remember Gorbachev? While we all cheered the Berlin Wall come down and Reagan was headed out the door, a very young ex-KGB officer was put in charge in Russia. The plan had begun. The military plan was hatched around 1964. In the Constitution, a civilian has to be in charge of the military as commander-in-chief. When the banking cartels removed the military's highest-ranking officer in 1963, the military didn't take kindly to it. There has been a silent but raging war behind the scenes for 60 years. I think we all agree presidents are puppets, but for who? Biden is no mastermind, and neither was Trump. They were frontmen. Biden for the Federal Reserve, Trump for the U.S. military. The military got Trump elected. They needed 4 years to set up the greatest plan ever. Remove the central banks from the globe. You are witnessing the beginning of the fall of the reserve note today as banks collapse one after one. What does this mean for all of you? The Federal Reserve is dying. The Department of Education will be gone. IRS, income tax, other useless bureaucracies are all going to implode. For all of you elected board members that have been here for years, Space Force was enacted just for you. Trump the puppet set it up for the military. When he said he caught you all, the military caught you all. For the new ones this year, you have a choice. Speak out now against CRT, DGI, SEL, the books, or go down with them. Thank you.
That's the one agenda.
Thank you. Next order of business, is our student council report. We have a fill-in student council representative, Ms. Sophia Footinger.
So we have finished up with exams and ended our second trimester. Our musical has also performed the past 2 weekends. Our winter sports have ended and our spring sports are just beginning. We also have a career fair this week for both juniors and seniors on Thursdays. Our blood drive is tomorrow and we are well on our way to reach our donor goal. And we also have a mental health awareness assembly on March 23rd with a student panel to help raise awareness. Thank you.
Thank you. Next order of business is our first report, and actually only report, and this is Alto Elementary. Mr. Pappas will provide a report on our math curriculum.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Pappas, principal at Alto Elementary. I'm here representing Alto today, but also our math committee, our K-5 math committee, our K-12 math committee, and all the great work that is done to support math instruction in our district. We do have a recommendation today to change our primary resource. We've used Everyday Math for a long time, so this was a big decision for us. But we feel really good about our process, and we feel very strong about our recommendation this evening. Just wanted to give you a little background with some of the behind-the-scenes work that's done around math instruction. We have the K-5 math team. We meet at least 3 times a year. We have representatives from every elementary building, throughout K-5 teachers. And we meet again at least 3 times a year, sometimes more. But we just continue to evaluate what our resources, what's best practice instruction in our district, and so forth. We also have a K-12 math team. This started with our My Kid goals. last fall, and so for the last 2 years, we've met 3 times a year, and we meet for a full day on each of those. In fact, we're meeting tomorrow with that team. That team is also led by a math specialist from the KISD. We're really fortunate to have some great specialists from the ISD, and we work really closely with them. Our MyKIP goals, I just referenced that. I think that's important to keep in mind here. That's the new school improvement process. Our goal, our district goal, is to improve math proficiency. So we're looking at Tier 1 best practice throughout the district. We're also reviewing our resources. We also look at what are we doing for students who need intervention. If you recall, Carmen Tani was here at the last board meeting and touched on that. MISHME, I bring this up just because we've had a number of our teachers who, most of them also serve on either the K-5 or the K-12 math committee. But this is Michigan Mathematics Educators. It's a collaborative network group that meets at the ISD. We're very fortunate, like I said, to have great math specialists, but also just very innovative specialists in the area of math. So that's really built the capacity of a number of the members that are in that group and also in our classrooms. I also noted the PLC process. As you know, we have adopted the PLC process this last school year. And as I go through a number of the things in our process and considering different resources, I think that you're going to notice some of these things come up. Identifying essential standards and just alignment with the standards. Mastery learning, differentiated learning, which supports the 4 essential questions. What is that we want students to learn? How do we know if they learned it or not? What do we do with students who haven't learned it? What do we do with students who have already learned it? And then the next one, K-5 LAS, so kind of transitioning. We have utilized everyday math for many years. I don't know if there's anybody in this room that can remember anything other than everyday math, or at least Chicago math that kind of transitioned into everyday math.
It was 1999. We started in 1999.
Is there anybody? So it's been a long time. I mean, we're talking about 20-some years. That has been Chicago math, is my understanding, or everyday math. This is my age here in the district, so I know it's been that long. But it was becoming evident through these groups, through our K-5 group, and then with our K-12 group, that there was becoming a dissatisfaction with everyday math. And it was specific to what we were learning about best practice. And it was specific to learning about teaching to the standards and making sure that we're doing that, teaching to mastery learning, and then providing for students, again, that differentiation, our students that already understand it, our students that don't get it yet. So it's becoming increasingly clear to us for a number of years within that team and other teachers, just kind of sharing their dissatisfaction with that. So our next step, we decided, well, let's do a district-wide survey. Let's survey all of our teachers at the elementary level, and let's determine how they feel about this. That's the next slide up. It was pretty overwhelming as far as the support to go in a different direction, or at least to consider a different direction. You can see the one question was, I prefer that LAS keep everyday math as the primary resource for students in grades K through 5. You can see only 25.7% of our teachers said yes. Many were neutral on it, 22.9%, and 51, so over half, said no. Very similar question, but worded just a little bit differently. I prefer that LAS discontinues the use of everyday math and look at other options for primary math instruction. You can see that 59% said yes, only 18.5% said no. So certainly supported us taking a look at other programs, other resources to determine if we would want to move in another direction. Important to note that everyday math wasn't off the table, but I think it's worth us taking a look at some other resources, meeting with some reps, looking at their materials to decide if we want to go forward. Go ahead, that's so within that process, that started last fall. We consulted with the ISD math specialists that we worked with on our K-12 team. I think one thing that's really interesting to know is you might think within the Kent ISD, it'd be reasonable to think, well, aren't there only a couple programs that you might consider? No, there are 10. There are 10 different primary resources that are used in Kent County elementary schools. So I thought that was interesting. We heavily utilized, based on the knowledge of our team, but also recommendations from the math specialists, ed reports ratings. that helps us to understand different areas, focus on coherence, so how does it align to the standards, rigor in mathematical practices, and then usability. So is it usable for our teachers, for our students, quality resources, quality assessments. We considered 4 primary resources. Big ideas. Some of our teachers had already taught big ideas with some advanced classes and so forth at the elementary level, but also the middle schools using big ideas. So that was one that we considered. Bridges math, everyday math, and there is an updated version. So we considered that, and then also Reveal math. The members of the K-5 math team met with reps for all 4 of those programs last year. We reviewed materials, we completed surveys to rate each of the programs. We made a team decision to pilot Bridges and Reveal math. It was very clear on the surveys that we did with our teachers that that's the direction that we should look at those 2 programs. We had teachers volunteer to pilot each of those programs. We had one teacher. That's a good question. We had one teacher at each grade level pilot each of the 2 programs. So we had 12 teachers piloting each of the 2. Throughout that time, we had different days that we relieved them from their classrooms to collaborate, to discuss, to have training. We also had opportunities for them to observe each other. In some cases, I know in my building, we had our first 2 first grade teachers. One was piloting Reveal, one was piloting Bridges, and it was a great opportunity for them to collaborate, discuss pros and cons and so forth. So a review criteria was created by the math pilot team to rate each of the 2 programs. So they knew ahead of time what that criteria was, and they knew that after we had completed that pilot, that they would take a survey so we could hear each of their voices. And then we complete 28 questions that were created by that team. You can see the areas in which those focused on, or those 28 questions fit within those categories. So just resources, digital and traditional assessments, some of the work that the LAS K-12 Math Committee had identified as best practice and the work that we've done, available resources and need for supplemental materials, implementation process and training required, and then the questions as far as do you think it'd be an improvement over everyday math, and if you think that we should adopt this program. I have two of the indicators up here for 2 reasons. One is just, this is an indication of those 28 questions. We had data like this on each one. We had several opportunities for comments within there as well, so teachers could share their comments about it. They also knew that we'd have a collaborative process at the end. This wasn't a rating system where we were assigning points to it. It's just simply gathering information, and then we would have discussion around this. But this was one of them that stood out to me, just as far as the work that K-12 team has done, as far as best practices in math instruction throughout the district, K-12. And as you can see, Bridges and Reveal both rated quite highly there. We did have one teacher for Reveal that wasn't able to complete the survey, but did pilot it through the first of the year. So we did get feedback from that teacher, but that's the reason that there's one not showing there. If you go to the next one, and then the other one is just a real foundational piece for K-5 math instruction, just number sense. And you can see that both of them scored quite well. Reveal was a little higher again than Bridges in that area. Ultimately, both programs were received quite well, which is an indication to us that we were heading in the right direction of considering different programs. Well, I say ours because Dan and I were very involved throughout this process. I would note, or to that note, is our teachers drove the process. We helped to guide that process. That's our teachers identified, I think we need something else. We're noticing that in our classroom, or the work that we're doing. And then they, in the survey, made a lot of decisions on what programs are we going to take a look at. And then again, each of their voices was captured through this survey as well. So you can go to the next slide, yes. One of the areas that we found to be some dissatisfaction with everyday math was that the need to supplement. Feeling like we didn't have all the resources that we needed. We need to pull a number of different things in. So this was one of our questions as well, and you can see for Reveal math. Does this resource require supplemental materials to be successful? 100% said no. For Bridges, very strong as well, but 66.7% said no. Do you believe this resource would be an improvement over our current math program? Everyday math. For the Reveal group, 100% of our teachers said yes. And for Bridges, 83.3% said yes. So as you can see, both programs we saw as an improvement over our current program, but Reveal is really standing out in our survey information. You can go on to the next slide.
I just did, sorry.
Oh, is this one? Okay. There's not another one. No.
That was when we were on, right? And then, there you go. Yeah, different questions.
No, but there should be. Okay. We did have a final pilot meeting where we collaborated. We had took 2 hours to discuss pros and cons of both programs. We went through each of these questions with both teams, and then we had a vote at the end of that time. It was a 9-to-1 vote from the team to go with Reveal Math. So that would be teachers that were piloting Bridges also said, I think we should go with Reveal. Some of them really liked the program, Bridges, but they didn't think it was the best fit for our district. And ultimately, that's an important decision. And an easier transition for all of us and our staff as we to the Reveal Math. And the one person that did vote for Bridges said, but I'd be very happy with Reveal. And you Reveal very well from a colleague that was teaching that. We did go to the Curriculum Council. Was voted on there, and was approved by the Curriculum Council as well, with K-12 reps. Just a few strengths, and sorry, I had some slides I don't know. Oh, there we go.
We're supposed to put out of order.
Okay. We'll go to the next one there. Okay, so just some strengths. Reveal Math, the publisher is McGraw-Hill, and I mentioned that because that's the same publisher as Everyday Math. I think that helps some with the transition because even though they're quite different programs, there's some similarities, and I think that helps our teachers a little bit with that transition. The Ed Reports, it meets expectations, which is the highest rating in all grades, K through 5, and in each of those areas. And that's just some other strengths. You can see them listed there. Standards alignment, mastery learning, increased rigor, abundance of resources, quality, the online resources, quality of the traditional printed resources, assessments, and then there's some really cool pieces with number routine and a notice and wonder that are part of every lesson that really encourage that number sense and that productive struggle that we talked about. In closing, I have a few quotes from our teachers. Well, no, I don't, not yet, sorry. Next steps, training. We're leaning really heavily on that Reveal pilot group for the training, as we should. What do we need to do for training? What do you think, and getting their voice into that? As well as meeting with instructional technology to make sure that we're covering that piece as well. The resource piece, of course, is important that we have those resources in our teachers' hands if we're going to implement that starting next school year, which is what we'd like to do. As we get into the implementation year, feedback for ongoing training is really important. And then, of course, communication is really important to our staff, but also to our students and our parents as far as some of the changes that they can expect. We would be looking at a 6-year contract for Reveal Math. I'm going to give you a minute just to read through some of these, and I highlighted some words that should look familiar for some of our goals that we were looking at. And these were from the survey, and these were some quotes from our teachers. Some pretty powerful quotes, I think. And then I put the last one there intentionally as part of our survey, of course, is were students engaged, and then they enjoy learning. And overwhelmingly, the answer was yes. You can see at the bottom there, we are on a roll, and so many of our kids tell me every day that they love the new math. They are excited about it, and the math that takes place each day in my classroom, just like what I see. So I'll leave you with that, unless you have other questions that you'd like to ask.
I just have one question. I'm excited about that last quote. I think it's really good if we have kids excited about math and science altogether. But question, did we get parent feedback from the pilot? I know for myself, learning Chicago math was a little bit different than math that I learned. So it came up with the same answers. It was, I had to be taught how to teach my kids first. I was never so excited for them to get to algebra. Work on that.
We did not do a survey of
Okay.
parents. That's something we can still consider.
Or even training
But-
with that. I mean, you know, that's a big piece. I mean, is it easy for them to help?
Yeah, but feedback from our teachers regarding, how their parents responded.
Good. Awesome. Thank you. I'm excited for it.
All right, thank you.
Next order of business is our action items, and that first action item is Reveal Math. The recommendation is that the Board of Education approve the purchase of Reveal Math totaling $192,654.60 for 6 years as recommended. Can I get a motion to accept that recommendation?
Oh, there you go.
I'll second him.
Move to accept it.
Motion by Tom, supported by Lori. Jeremy on the next one. Discussion on the purchase.
Yeah, I mean, I would just, thanks, Paul. I mean, you've heard us talk about this more than once at the last workshop. You had some talking points. If approved, we really need to move forward with a training plan. We did have a meeting last week with the pilot teachers and Carmen, Tony, and Julie Pelletier, just to brainstorm how to best roll this out. And, as Paul said, rely on our pilot teachers as well to be leaders in terms of training, which is nice because we have some in-house people that can help facilitate that learning. So I guess I just wanted to go there.
Dan, once the, excuse me, when does the training get started?
Well, because of the number of teachers involved, it's likely that we're looking at either the first or second week after school in June. We're looking at like a 2-day training where we'd split up by K2 teachers and then 3-5, and each group would do a half day each day for the training. And then there would be some follow-up training as well for those that can't attend. There are some virtual options as well throughout the summer that we'll be able to offer.
Any other questions? If no, vote is in order. All those in favor of the purchase of Reveal Math as described, please notify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next order of business is the Social Studies Alive program. The recommendation is that the Board of Education approve the purchase of Social Studies Alive totaling $63,945 for 6 years as recommended. Could I get a motion to bring that item to order? Motion by Jennifer. Could I get support?
Sure.
Support by Jerry. Discussion.
I'd just add with the social studies that, like the math, this has been a long process and been a lot of engagement with this process. So, I'll let Dan speak to see if there's any.
Yeah, and Mr. Weldon is here. I mean, he helps facilitate, he really facilitates our K-5 social studies vertical team. Again, last month at the workshop, we talked about this. This is on a little bit of a smaller scale just because it's intended for 4th and 5th grade teachers only. But we currently have somewhere around 13 of our 4th and 5th grade teachers piloting it right now, out of roughly 20, 21 teachers. So most of our 4th grade and 5th grade teachers are already using it, and we've received really nothing but positive feedback. So that also went before Curriculum Council, who there was some discussion and had unanimous approval through Curriculum Council. That's also a 6-year piece that has an online site, and then they send a consumable student journal each year as well for 4th and 5th grade.
So prior to this, if I remember right, or whatever from what you told us before, 4th and 5th grade did not have necessarily a standardized across all teachers, across all buildings. We were a little bit hit or miss as to what
Correct.
each teacher was sort of finding what they could find.
There was a textbook that I kind of don't know how old it was. You know, we have the standards, obviously, and that's what we operate from. That really is our curriculum. But in terms of the tool or resource, it was very scattered. I know it's something that Nate worked on when he was in my role leading up to COVID and the pandemic. And once we were able to come back to it, we really wanted to find something more standardized and offer consistency for our social studies instruction.
Any other questions? Hearing none, a vote is in order. All those in favor of the purchase of Social Studies Alive as described, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next order of business is the Book Review Committee. There's a recommendation that the Board of Education vote to accept the Book Review Committee's recommendation to leave the book All Boys on Blue in the high school library, where the book will be accessible to seniors or parental permission is given to the students in younger grade levels. Could I get a motion to bring this item forward?
So moved.
Motion by Lori. Could I get support? Support by John. Discussion on the topic. If none, I do have a statement that I drafted from our discussion at the workshop. Hearing none, I will give
I don't know if you want to read that first and then us read. I would say something at some point.
Go ahead,
I don't know what the
please.
order
I'll
is.
just, yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to be redundant. I don't know what Brian's going to say. But we did discuss this at our workshop and gave the time that we could. It's been something that we take seriously, and you know, and was evident in how we discussed at our workshop. I think I was pleased with the level of discussion and each person's input. We all read the book and had input on it. As I said before, it's not a book that I would have chosen to read or whatever, but that doesn't mean that I think it necessarily has to be out of the library. And I think that's a comment that came up again and again at our meeting, not to speak for others. And you know, I think the board has done what it has been asked to do and has reviewed and has given due process and due diligence to this, as has the book committee prior to us, according to our policy. And so I will be supportive of this motion to accept that.
Any other comments? If none, I want to say thank you to everyone who was involved in the process to review the formal complaint of All Boys Aren't Blue. Thank you to the committee who engaged in thoughtful, meaningful conversation about the book. Thank you to Mrs. Beachler for your leadership in developing a library program that promotes the expression of different viewpoints, experiences, and ideas to help prepare our students for life after high school. Thank you to members of our community and students for weighing in on this book and sharing opinions on the book. And thank you to my fellow board members for the time and thoughtful input at the February workshop. The board supports our library program. Library books are optional reading, not required. Our collection is meant to serve a diverse student population that has many different circumstances, so eloquently pointed out by Mr. Blau and others during our workshop conversation. We want our students to see themselves in our books as well as give them glimpses into the lives of others. Systems are in place to provide parents with controls over what their children check out from the library. As we discussed, we support the efforts of Mrs. Beachler, our teachers, and school principals. We also expect them to continue to improve these systems while providing our students with an engaging and informative library collection with controls that restrict viewing to grade appropriateness, as is the case in All Boys Aren't Blue, and as discussed in the workshop meeting. As a board, we support the senior grade level reading of this book and look forward to the process improvements for the 23-24 school year that Mrs. Beachler and Mr. Goff expressed during the board workshop discussion. Thank you. With that, a vote is in order. All those in favor of the book review committee, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next order of business is our consent grouping. This is a compilation of a number of different approval of meeting minutes, payment of bills, overnight student trips, etc. Can I get a motion to bring the consent grouping to order?
I move to bring it to order.
Motion by Tom. Could I get support for that? Support by Jennifer. Discussion on any of the consent grouping items.
This is the regular approval of minutes and paying of bills. It does include an overnight student trip for our girls soccer team this spring, just part of their preseason training as they head prior to spring break. So they'll be going to, I believe it's Spring Hill Camp in Everett, Michigan for an overnight training trip.
Just one night.
Just one night, correct.
Any other questions or comments on the consent grouping? Hearing none, a vote is in order. All those in favor of approving the consent grouping, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next order of business is information sharing. Our first update is our human resource update. Mr. Shack.
Yeah, right now, we're nearing that March 15th date, and I spoke about it before. That's that early retirement incentive for staff. So that date's big and allows us to put postings out. So currently, we've had numerous staffing meetings in an effort just to see the impact that attrition may have on replacing and or rehiring staff. When we meet, we're taking a look at current staff, we're taking a look at internal requests that they may have. And they might be as simple as grade level, sometimes subject level too, depending on the certs. And we take a look at the certs as well, just to see if we do have to maneuver, what that would look like. Historically, there aren't too many moves, transfers, or anything like that in Lowell. We've been pretty firm with being able to keep people where they want. But there are requests that we take a look at when jobs open, and from time to time, we will see some movement. Some based on want, some based on need, just to keep our district moving forward. But right now, these meetings are taking place. They were bi-weekly, but now they're weekly, especially with that March 15th date. We have had a few that have come in, so you will see postings out there. You'll see other postings to come. So that's the main concern right now, because the goal from the very beginning was to be able to post around that spring break time, and that's why we work so hard with all of the unions to make sure we have the ability to do so, so the people that are applying, for one, larger numbers, a variety of applicants, diverse applicants, or a diverse pool of applicants, that allows us to find the best fit for Lowell area schools on all levels, not just LEA, but support staff, drivers, and everything else. So that's the number one right now, and then number two, with the calendar dates coming to form, while Dan will take a look at the PD for the professional staff, I'm beginning to look at the PD for support staff and drivers. And a part of our negotiations with the drivers, because it's the only bargaining unit right now we're negotiating with, we are working collaboratively to work on PD for drivers, which include everything from driver safety to threat assessment and more. We're trying to do that as a whole throughout the support staff group as well. Most recently, and to close on the Friday in the afternoon was Records Day for professional staff, but we ended up having, I believe it was 15 support staff in for CPR training, and then 6 from the Wittenbach. So we're training out there as well. It was a good afternoon. Our school nurses ran through that after they did 2 hours of prep work online through the ISD prior. So when they came in, it was merely testing and going through what you need to obtain certification. And we'll continue to offer that. I know, Laura, you asked before, we're continuing to try to hit as many different areas of our educational system as we can and making sure that we provide that. Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free. Thank you.
Next order of business is our budget update. Ms. Hott.
Yeah, so I just have a couple of updates for you. You should all have a packet of payroll paperwork in front of you. Sometime before the May meeting, bring them back to a meeting, and I'll just need to sign off on a couple forms and do those forms of identification, and then we'll get everything processed in June. So if you have any questions, my contact information is there, and feel free. The other thing I wanted to update you on is we received notice, again, that we have excess fund balance in our food service funds. We've had this since the pandemic, and many districts are in the same situation. We had increased reimbursements for food service costs to a point where we just cannot comply with the excess fund balance requirements they have. So we're working on a spend down plan, which we've submitted today to the state to be approved. One of the things that we have on there is the generators project that's already in progress, and that will take up the bulk of that excess fund balance. We also have on there oven replacements. We're going to replace 16 ovens, it'll be 8 units of 2 ovens each across the district at all buildings except for the middle school. And then the last thing that we were able to include in there is to remove the cost for reduced price breakfast and lunch. For anybody who qualifies for reduced, their cost will now be free. That is an allowable use of those dollars, and we thought that would be a really valuable use of those dollars to help those families. So notices are going out to families this week. There will also be a link in the notice so that any families who have not applied that think they might be eligible for reduced can do so. That's still an option. And that will be effective on Monday. So we were able to get that started right away. So we're excited about that. If all goes well and the numbers work out the way we think they will, we should be able to continue this into next school year.
Thank you. Next order of business is our curriculum update.
Okay, a lot for me tonight. So Mr. Pappas mentioned tomorrow is a work day again for our K-12 math vertical team. We've been real excited about that work. Mr. Pappas also talked about the MishMe training for many of our math teachers. So we've been working expressly on creating a K-12 district math vision statement as well as collective commitments. So whether you teach kindergarten or whether you teach Algebra 1, working on collective commitments. We have the high school and middle school math department chairs that are part of that, as well as a number of elementary teachers. And we're going to continue to move forward to match up Tier 1 best practice strategies with each collective commitment. The work and the hope is to continue to communicate what Tier 1 best practice looks like throughout the district. Again, regardless of what grade or level one teaches. So those have been very productive days, and we have our last full day tomorrow. I think we also heard about the career fair coming up this Thursday, March 16 at the high school. So thank you to the high school staff. I know the counselors have been working really hard on the career fair. That's part of our K-12 career and college readiness path as a district. As a reminder, remember we do have 8th grade exploratory classes going on called career readiness as well, along with the educational development plans, which start technically in 7th grade and run through 12th grade. So looking forward to visit the career fair on Thursday at the high school. And then the last thing for me is just I managed to get to Matilda Saturday night for the sold out show, and boy, I'm glad I did. I see Mrs. Phelps is in the audience, and I really enjoyed your role and efforts. And it was just very energizing. The talent, the energy from the young people reminded me of why we have co-curricular and extracurricular activities. It reminded me that learning occurs in the classroom, it also occurs outside of the classroom, and we just have a lot of points of pride throughout our district. Nate and I were talking a little bit earlier today. It was sort of too many to rattle off a list, but I just was thrilled with the energy and the community support of of all 5 of those shows was really just incredible. So congratulations to the cast and crew.
Thank you. Next order of business, public comments.
Kim Long.
Hi, when I used to come to speak at board meetings, we had to say our name. And as somebody that watches from home, I'd like that to happen again. My name is Kim Long, and I was a kindergartner in this building in 1960. But I have a lot of other history here in Lowell School. I was a teacher in Lowell for about 40 years, and some other stuff too. I want to talk to you today about the word opportunity. All of the people that live around here have an opportunity. It's an opportunity to share what we believe. And one of the ways you can share what you believe is by being involved in a positive way. There's a girl, well, she's a woman now, but when she came to school in Lowell, they didn't have an orchestra. They had it where she used to go to school, and her mom was really upset and quite pissed off about it, I'll tell you. And you know what that proper lady did? She got involved. She's one of the first parents that I know of that got involved with having orchestra in Lowell area schools. And now we can watch those children on Facebook do their concerts for competition and be astounded by what these kids are doing. That's one way to find an opportunity to make a difference here. Another one was a parent from my classroom, long ago at parent-teacher conferences, and we were chatting about her child, and she shared that her daughter came home and said, "You don't like Bart Simpson, do you?" And I said, "Oh, what did I say that she thought that?" And she said, "Well, somebody was telling about Bart Simpson." And you said, "Oh, you didn't know about that. You don't watch that on TV." And I said, "Well, that's true." And I said, "There are words that we don't use in my classroom either, because that's language for somewhere else if your family wants you to use it. But it's not for here." Those are opportunities. And I said to the mom, "Well, I know that you take your kids to learn a lot of things that we don't teach here at our school." And I said, "And I know that you could take your children anywhere to school. You have the means to do it." And the mom said, "No, when our children grow up, they will be members of the working community that we live in or that they choose to live in. We want our kids to know how to be with all different kinds of people and how to stand for what they believe in from our home, but not put other people down. They need to know how to be in the world." And I was, let's see, the oldest in that family is 42, so it was a long time ago, and I still remember this. What an important thing that we all have to teach our kids. When I got married, my husband said to me shortly before we got married, "You know, there are going to be people that don't like this." I said, "What's going on that I didn't know?" My husband's parents are from mainland China. And I said, "What don't I know?" And he said, "Well, you know, you're not Chinese, and I am Chinese."
So we have a 3-minute.
Can I finish fast while I walk to my seat? I want you to know, we found places where my kids could see people that looked like their ancestors. We stayed in Lowell. You have a chance to make a difference here. Thank you.
At last month's Board of Education meeting, I witnessed and justified the student decline in enrollment because families were having less babies. Lowell's population increase is not because a senior citizen destination, but more because of affordable housing, family housing. I simply did a day trip in your community, you would see many new housing developments and immediate notice of abundance of kids' playground equipment, bikes, cycles, sleds, and other visible signs of young demographics. I recently attended a Kent County Board of Commission meeting where housing experts highlighted a shortage of 35,000 affordable homes, family home units in Kent County because of the increased population within our county. When a family decides to pull their kids from Lowell schools, they take into account the additional cost, time, and money. Despite the fact that these tax dollars support this district, what are they saying about Lowell schools and the confidence in this Board of Education? You keep telling yourself that families are having less babies as justification for student enrollment declines. One day in the near future, you'll be discussing empty classrooms and underutilized school buildings. Is that when this body will react? You need to restore parents' confidence in the school system. The solution is simple. We need to stop the community divide by the first order of business to eliminate your diversity, equity, and inclusion department that is based upon the ideology of CRT. A basic concept that there are those that are oppressed and the oppressor. Lowell schools need to return to neutrality and focus on the education of students and eliminate social-emotional curriculum. Instead of discussing the removal of pornographic books, the discussion would be of what algebra, English, history book to use. At that time, the decision to remove pornographic books will become an easy decision as each will evaluate how does that help the kids' education. At last month's Board of Education meeting, I gave the superintendent a D- and talked about why Lowell School had 14 pot shops. I simply pointed out that the Colorado-based marijuana companies that were making investments in this community because of your demographics. I asked each of you to visit the places and see your own handiwork. Where is the equity for these students?
Carrie Vanderboom.
Hi, my name is Carrie Vanderboom. I want to start out by thanking each of you for taking the time to read the book, All Boys Aren't Blue. I appreciated that you all read it thoroughly and gave your review on it. With that being said, as I sat and listened to each of you review it, all I heard was how you yourselves thought of the contents of the book. Not one of you mentioned how it would be, or how it would be to have a minor read this book. Why do you feel the need to keep books on your library shelves that contain pictures and depictions of a pornographic nature? Mrs. Kuna mentioned at the work session meeting that it is a public school, so therefore it is a public library. Not true. A public library is geared to the general public. The majority of the collections are not academically focused. School libraries, especially upper grade levels, should be geared towards academic focus. Books that help your students with research and basic learning. I'm curious to know what academic value does this book have inside? If you can't give me an answer, then what benefit does it have being on our library shelf? When does a child reach maturity enough to understand vulgar, obscene language and explicit content? The question is, are you promoting healthy development in our children? When students receive exposure to graphic materials then there can be adverse psychological effects that occur afterward. The exposure to content such as this may cause trauma and impair the young person's social and interpersonal development. I would think schools would want to promote good behavior and materials that would aid in that. Can you honestly say the books with violence, rape, sexual interactions, and explicit graphics hold any educational value and aid in our children's healthy development? We are looking for better discretion with these books. If you really wanted to serve our students, then wouldn't you want to promote the classics instead of these books with explicit graphic nature?
David Kapolka. Stephanie Boone.
And I live in Ada, and I have children that go to Forest Hills Public Schools and also Lowell area schools, to clarify that for some of you who still don't think that I have any business being here. On March 1st, staff miscommunication led to frustration and misunderstanding for many of the KCTC students at LHS. One of them called their mom for support that day because they felt that Mr. Goff was treating them unfairly and disrespectfully. While the mom was on the phone, unbeknownst to Mr. Goff, she happened to overhear him telling the group of students in a very demeaning tone that they were lying and that they were stupid. The mom asked to speak with Mr. Goff, and his tone completely changed as she told him that she had verified with the office that in fact he was wrong and the students were right. Since then, a few brave students have come together in confidence to make a statement about their concerns, and here are some excerpts, you have them in front of you, from the letters that they have taken time to write to each of you. Dear school board members, we as students are asking for your help. We are being bullied on multiple levels by some of the faculty at LAS. In a school district where we have been taught that bullying is wrong and unacceptable, and respect and kindness are to be shown to everyone, we are getting the opposite. We're here to learn and grow as humans, to be led to success throughout our schooling. But when verbal name-calling and accusations are what we are handed, we will withdraw. On numerous occasions, I've witnessed teachers using inappropriate language, yelling at students and belittling them in front of the class. This kind of treatment makes me and other students feel unwelcome, unsafe, and unsupported. It creates a hostile learning environment for students. I urge the school board to take immediate action to investigate this matter and implement measures to prevent such behavior in the future. That's not me speaking, that's one of your students. I'm not alone in facing this issue. Many other students in our school have also been subjected to bullying and harassment, and it is clear that our current systems and policies are not sufficient to address these problems effectively. This includes implementing stricter policies and consequences for bullying. Again, I urge the school board to take this issue seriously and work towards creating a positive and inclusive school culture for all. Again, those are statements from students, very mature, brave students, to speak out about that. Your board policy, along with MCL 380.1310B, covers bullying and aggressive behavior towards students. The policy and the law prohibit verbal and psychological abuse and comments which cause personal degradation. Please reach out to me so that I can put you in contact with the proper people to address these concerns, because this is not okay. This is against the law, once again, and it's unacceptable. Maybe it's time our staff have some PBIS training and some activities, do you think? Thank you.
Next order of business is our superintendent's report.
All right, thank you. There's a lot to unpack there. I'll start just by saying, I've worked with Mr. Goff, when we were middle school athletic directors, going back probably 15 years ago, and my impression of him was somebody who was very knowledgeable and very caring about providing opportunities to kids. And then in the 5 years that I've worked with him in Lowell area schools, the first complaint I've had about Mr. Goff's behavior towards students was at a public board meeting tonight. So if there are concerns, that's fine, but
What about
we could address
when I brought
those.
my concerns to you about him?
That was we dealt with that, we worked through that, and it was related
Well,
to
you're
the
saying
masking
this
and
is
the
the
turning
first
it.
time?
Okay, so we brought that. But anyway, we
This is not public comment.
yeah, we have time during 9130 in a formal process for dealing with those complaints. Mr. Goff has been a person who is a person with integrity and has the best interests of kids and works with that. I would also say that just when I spend time in all of our schools, when I spend time in the high school, I see staff members engage with kids in a positive way, building relationships with kids. When I'm in classrooms, I see positive interactions happening all the time. If there are isolated incidents, we can talk about those and we can address those and we can get better. We definitely need some more context than what we have in these letters right here. So I'm hoping that we can have more context if we're talking about these complaints.
I can get that for you, reach out to me.
Okay. The other thing I would say, Mr. Lee, I appreciate you clarifying that I received a D- and not our students. The more I thought about that, the more just offended I became, just because I would stack our kids up against anybody as being employable, as being prepared for college. Our staff and our teachers do a great job. I'd also just clarify that, I think you made a really good point about the affordable housing, and I think we have an opportunity, and if there is an opportunity to work together to address that. When we talk about declining enrollments, we're not talking specifically about Lowell schools, although we have faced declining enrollments through the pandemic, but it's something across Kent County. And I'd love to brainstorm ways to find more affordable housing in our community and across the county. I think that if you look at our elementary grades, we're seeing stable and increasing enrollment at our elementary. Our kindergarten enrollment is strong. When we opened our Curiosity Corner preschool enrollment, within a couple weeks we had 165 3- and 4-year-olds signed up for our preschool enrollment. Great Start Readiness enrollment for that preschool program is also open, and we'll see, just as that program expands in the state of Michigan, what impacts that has, but I don't know the Great Start enrollment numbers right now, but my guess is that it'll continue to be strong as well. And so we're talking about ways when we had families and kids who sought other avenues for education in the community. What can we do to provide those opportunities and provide those supports? The musical is a great example of just seeing kids working together, the talent that we have in our student body, the hard work. Like, people are dedicated to create a great product, and they did that. So, Mrs. Lum, your question about, or your point about opportunities, we have a lot of opportunities to work together with that as well. And the other comment about just the sexual content in some of our library books, or the violent content in some of our library books. Yeah, there are some mature themes in our libraries, but I would also add that I don't have this data specific to our student body, but if you, Common Sense Media released a report last month or the month before, in which they said that, and I'm going to make some numbers up right now, but between 75 to 80% of 17-year-olds have accessed pornography online. The average age when kids first access pornography online is age 12. Prior to this book challenge, we had one student, is that correct? One student who had checked out All Boys Aren't Blue. In a piece of literature, taken in context, has a much broader context for that. So I just wonder if we're asking ourselves the right question. We are concerned about kids' access to violence, kids' access to sexual content, but what can we do as a society to help provide safe environments so kids are having healthy conversations as they mature into adulthood? So I hope that we can continue that dialogue and continue to find ways to make sure that we are providing safe environments for our students. Got some celebrations and some gratitude to express tonight as well. The gratitude goes to our grounds, our maintenance, and our custodial staff, just dealing with the winter weather that we've had in the last couple weeks. And it was different depending on where you were in the district, what types of frozen precipitation you were seeing. So it's been a lot to deal with. It's been some very early mornings and some very long days, and so I appreciate the work that's gone into that. Also appreciate the work that our drivers do, and just how messy our roads get in the month of March. And to top it all off, we added an extra hour of darkness for them this week too. So thank you to our drivers for the work that you do with that. It's a lot. I also want to express gratitude to our curriculum review teams, Mr. Pappas and Mr. Vandermeer and the leadership with this review process. This transition to Reveal Math is one that's been very deliberate. It's been a lot of thought that's gone into that, and just determining that this tool is the best to help us deliver standards to our students. The most important thing that we have in place is we have great teachers who practice great instruction, so that conversation that the K-12 team is engaged with those instructional practices is just as important and goes hand in hand with this tool and this resource. So I do appreciate the work with that. A couple updates from Lansing. Last week we saw the repeal of the retention component of the third grade reading law. That takes effect next year, so this year's third graders will still be following the regular process that we've had in place. Since that law has been enacted, we've had a few, probably fewer than 5 students who have, 5 families who have been impacted by that, but we'll continue to have those conversations, continue to have those dialogues with families about engaging their students with that. Sophia mentioned that today was the start of spring sports. Great weather for that. We also ramped up our winter program, and it was just an incredible success across the board. Our wrestling team continues to represent us with just really proud of the work that they do with the state title, and also the individual wrestlers who competed at the individual state finals. Last weekend, our gymnastics team competed at the state finals in Metro Detroit. We had a bowler, we had a couple skiers who also qualified for state finals. Our basketball teams both advanced in the state tournament. Our cheer team had a strong showing across the board. It was very strong performances by our athletes in the winter. Academically, a lot of planning has been underway for our spring testing. And so, we've talked about the implementation of the PLC. We've talked about a lot of the instructional practices. So just looking forward to the math testing, looking forward to the M-STEP, and some of the other suite of spring tests to see how we're making progress in this to continually improve in that journey. So look forward to the next weeks and months as we go through that, just to see some of those measures of success that we continue to enjoy academically, as well as in the LPAC and on the athletic field. I keep looking at Gabby, but Gabby's back there too. You guys are, crew's awesome too. So.
Thank you. Next order of business, board communications. Lori, start with you.
I would just like to say happy March is Reading Month. And the other thing is also, Carrie, in response to your comment about classics, yeah, there is a place and a time for classics, but there is also a place and a time for any kind of book that you can use as representation. And I know that kind of is a naughty word to some people sitting in this room, but we are a public school, and we are supposed to allow our students to grow in every way possible. And one of the things that representation does, and you mentioned this, is that it allows us to basically walk in shoes that we will never be able to walk in. And that was a comment that I had made at the workshop when we discussed All Boys Are Blue. I will never be black, I will never be male, I will never be gay. So reading that book was an opportunity for me to see something that through the eyes of a person who has a different lens. And I think that you can only improve as a human being, you can only improve yourself going forward with the learning that you do by doing that kind of stuff. And that's why I think we have an obligation to our students to give them the opportunity to read beyond And this is not, you know, they don't have to do that. And you don't see those drawings unless you absolutely look for them. You don't see those naughty words unless you absolutely look for them. You can find that, you know, I mean, it takes work to find a book that you can be offended by. Okay, you have to go and look it up, you have to do the research, that kind of stuff. So I don't have a problem with our books, I will never have a problem with our books. As Brian said in his statement, the board approves of what we've been doing. So you want to keep bringing up books, go ahead, but we stand by our policy, we stand by our librarian, and we stand by our municipal.
Just a general comment, I guess, and maybe related to some of the other things that were said tonight. It's disappointing to me to read online, and I don't do Facebook, but I was reading on my mom's Facebook account. I don't do Facebook. But when I read where we have members of the community, people who decide they have to go on to the LEF website, Facebook page, which I am a proud member of the LEF, and cast aspersions about an elementary teacher's classroom library and inappropriate materials in a library that a teacher that person has no direct contact with, but has to bring up these comments, that's disappointing to me. It's disappointing to me to sit here in a public meeting and have a person get up and publicly defame one of our school administrators based on something that person has no direct knowledge of. Secondhand evidence with little specific details. I believe 100% that parents are primary educators. I believe 100% in parents' rights, which gets talked about a whole lot lately. And I've said this before in my public comments. If we have parents who have specific concerns, please contact us specifically about your children and their concerns. Talk to the teacher, talk to the principal, talk to the superintendent specifically about this. We need and we want to have those authentic conversations because we want to be better, we want to do better. We want to talk with the parents, we want to talk with the students who are involved. We don't need a self-appointed spokesperson. We need authentic conversations with the people who are involved.
Pat, I have got
The book review process has been very eye-opening for me. In addition to the book review committee, each of the school board members read the challenged book. If my experience with this process was any indication, board members have heard from all kinds of different people in the district about their thoughts and opinions. Whether you agree with this decision or not, the school district and board have taken this seriously. They tried to look at all sides of the issue and work to make an informed decision that is in the best interest of all of our students. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. I'm sure you and I have very different opinions about what we want our children to read. I have kids in Lowell. I have a senior in high school. I know what I want her to read. She's 17. We've talked about sex. You know, I'm not waiting until she's 18 to talk to her about sex.
Good.
Exactly. And so if she reads a book that mentions sex, I'm okay with that. Again, everyone's entitled to their own opinions, and it only makes sense that not everybody's going to agree on the suitability or necessity of certain books. What is important is that we give families the tools to prepare their children to be adults after high school, and we allow them to choose how to do it. What is just as important is that we realize we might disagree on what's best, but we're all trying to do what's best for our own children. The other thing is, I went and saw Matilda and it was amazing. I meant to say that first, but I got excited.
I just have two quick comments. First, excited about Reveal Math. Thank you, Mr. Pickens, for all the diligence that you put forth there. I look forward to helping my grandkids, not in the next 15 years, with their math. And then I'd also like to thank Ms. Sloan. Appreciate you coming to our board meeting. You give us a perspective of what it was like moving through our district over a period of time. And personally, I was a recipient of your orchestra conversation where my daughter was able to participate in what I consider the best orchestra in Michigan, hands down. So with that, I am done with my public comment. The next order of business is to go into closed session to discuss negotiations. Can I get a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Motion by Lori. Can I get support? Support by Tom. Roll call vote. Mr. Nugent? Yes. Jennifer? The chair is yes. Lori? Yes. Tom? Yes. Here. We are in closed session. Motion carries. We're in closed session. We were talking about.
Thank you very much.
Fine. Thank you for your support.
Oh, yeah.